Well, it turns out you have some questions, and I might have some useful answers. Let's find out, shall we? Hey, welcome to the weekend, everybody. This is bFIT Bonus, the extra chocolate chips in your bag of bFIT Radio Trail Mix. Some hopefully useful stuff you can carry into the weekend. I'm Scott. Let's get into it. Well, a delightful thing has happened as a result of this humble little show reaching out into the universe. I'm actually receiving listener questions, which means, I don't know, we must be doing something right, I guess. Looking for information. So I thought I'd use this particular episode of bFIT Bonus to answer them, and perhaps you can find some value here to add to your life as well. I don't think there's a better thing in this world than people seeking to elevate themselves and seeking help to get down the road. So if you have questions, by all means, send it in. Let's make this a thing. You can email me at scott@balancefitsc.com or message me on those socials if that's your thing. Now let's get right into it. First, I want to talk about this. Last night, my wife and I were in the car, and she was kind of flexing her hand, and she pointed down to the first knuckle on her right hand. She's right-handed, and said, I don't know what this is or if it's a thing at all, but this area hurts. And she does have a history of arthritis in her family, particularly with the women in her family, her grandmother and her mother. So that's concerning. However, as I looked at her, there was no swelling or deformity or anything like that. And it just occurred to me as she was holding her hand there like that, she has a desk job. She sits down. Well, we got her a standing desk, but anyway, she works a 8:30 to 5:30 desk job, we'll call it. What she does is very complex, but she's in meetings all day and on her computer. That's what we'll put it that way. And so as I looked at her hand, I'm like, well, look at that for a second and think about what it is that you do every day for 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day. And if you're on the podcast side of this and not on YouTube, I'm holding my hand kind of like a claw. And it's that pose, even when you're not clicking. Think of how many times, if you work 8 or 9 or 10 hours at a desk, how many times you click with that finger, putting, even though it might be minor, a little bit of stress on that joint. But also, aside from the clicking, think about how you hover your hand on that. You rest your hand on that mouse and hover that finger over that. And it just, I told that to her. I said, think about what you do. Think about what you do throughout the day. And I don't know what we're supposed to do about that. In fact, I watch people walk around with, in the modern pose with the head bowed, chin on the chest, arm crooked up with the little handheld glowing god of mental sawdust firmly in the palm and that thumb hovering right there, just mindless, just either waiting to do nothing or waiting to doom scroll stuff that you're never going to actually see, process, or never even remember. And I wonder how long it's going to be before humans evolve into being born into that position, like some dystopian, misshapen Lego man with hands like that and that thumb ready to hover. So anyway, that is from Meredith in Easley, South Carolina, otherwise known as my beautiful bride. So, that was just a thing last night. Think about that. Think about all the little modern things with technology that are affecting our lives. And I mean really affecting our lives in little sub-micro ways each and every day that we just don't even think about. And I'm not really sure that there's anything we can do about that. I'm not sure. I know that there's ergonomic mice. I know that there's alternatives to that with ergonomic devices that you can use, but still, you're going to still be hovering with that hand and pointing and clicking. Anyway, all right, let's get into the actual questions that came in via messages and email and whatnot. So I'll start here. I like this one. I like to know people's stories. I'm a storyteller. I like to tell stories. I love to hear stories. So this one kind of leads into that. Becca in Spokane, I presume Washington. I don't know any other Spokanes. By the way, pretty cool city. We ended up spending a night there at a really rad hotel downtown on a trip that we took out to Idaho and Montana, to Glacier National Park in Idaho. So we flew into Spokane, stayed there, and then drove from there across Idaho, Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint, and over into Glacier National Park. And if you've never been there, I highly recommend it. Anyway, she asks, multi-part here, how did you get your start in coaching or personal training? What made you want to do this? And do you remember your first client or student? And I like this. So let me start here. Do you remember your first client or student? As I read this and I thought about it, and the honest answer is yes, I do. And it was when I was about 11 or 12 years old. I can't remember the exact year. But stay with me here on this. I was at summer camp. Summer camp I went to every single summer from like age 8 through about 15. And I was a camper and then eventually became a counselor. It's a big part of my life. YMCA camp in Athens, Georgia, Camp Kelly. It's not there. Well, actually, I think Camp Kelly is there, but they've moved the old kids now in a new place. But anyway, we were in the pool. It was swim time. And one of the younger kids was having trouble, younger by like a year or two than me, was having trouble, didn't know how to swim. And came up to me, which I thought was pretty brave of a little kid like that, and asked if I could help. Could I teach him how to swim? And I was a pretty good swimmer at that point. I grew up on the water. And it was, first of all, even at that age, I thought that was pretty cool that he would ask and that I could have the opportunity to help someone. And so I did. I walked him through everything, swam him through everything. And, before the end of our swim period that day, he was able to kind of do a serviceable forward crawl. Not quite a freestyle, but he wasn't afraid of drowning. He wasn't sucking water into his lungs. And I was pretty stoked about that. So I really, honestly, in my heart, I consider that my first kind of foray into teaching, coaching, into that kind of thing. And I think I realized very early on, I'm not saying I realized it then at that age, but I realized that I think that I have a talent for it. And I get a lot of fulfillment out of helping people. So that's what I consider my first client. Or student, actually, client. There was no payment there. What made you do this and how did you get your start in coaching or personal training? I've been involved. I've been coaching all the way from youth to adult since early on, since I was a teenager. And in the Marine Corps, taught mixed martial arts. And from there, through some of my professional life post-military, I trained people at a high level to do various things in the various positions that I held, and I really got a lot of fulfillment and enjoyment out of it. So I've been teaching, coaching, training most of my life. Now, what made me want to do this, and I take that as this in particular, becoming a personal trainer. Through all the coaching and teaching that I've done, I've never had any official certification. Never needed it. Well, that's not true. I was certified to do training at a position that I held for a number of years, but that was internally. So there was a catalyst in my life, in my family, that was a lot of stuff, that there was a snowball effect that led up to this particular moment that made me decide I need to go ahead and get my certifications as a personal trainer, a nutrition coach, et cetera, so I can legitimately help people. And so people who are seeking this kind of help out can come find me and put myself out there as an actual business person, an actual legitimate personal trainer and coach. And the moment, well, over the last 10 years, I think we've all seen how the culture has declined into being very sedentary. a catastrophic amount of obesity, a catastrophic amount of sedentary lifestyle. And I've been watching my own friends and family and all the people around me slowly decline, physically as well as mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And they're all linked. But about 2 years ago, I'm going to try to keep this as anonymous as possible. On a particular holiday at a particular place, a particular family member was getting a turkey out of the oven. And this particular family member, that involves hinging and loading up that hinge. So you're pulling out a big old heavy bird out of the oven in a hinged position. It's a fundamental human movement pattern. And this particular relative, who should have been able to do it, not enfeebled, not elderly, not a child, nothing like that, should have been strong enough and stable enough to do this and couldn't. And it crushed me watching that. That was the catalyst, and that was the moment where I decided I have to do something about this. I'll be 57 years old here in a couple of months, and I'm getting to that point in my life that I think every conscientious person gets to, where they look back and they say, have I done anything useful or consequential or helpful? And, you know, in my life, outside of raising our daughter, helping to raise our daughter, I don't know how much I've done that was really meaningful. I'm sure there's something in there. We all have impacts on people that we don't know each and every day. But as a vocation or a career or a calling or a mission, what have I done that was actually meaningful? And I don't know what. So I have a talent for this, and you need to maximize your talents. Not everybody can do everything. Not everybody is a physicist defining the universe. Not everybody's an engineer building cities. We all have to work with what we have and do the best with it. And so that's what I've done here. And hopefully I can use my education and my skills to help people who are seeking it in this world. So I hope that answered the question, and I'm glad you asked that. Here's another one from Chris in Marietta, Georgia, my hometown. I noticed in your videos that one of the guitars on the wall has a sock behind the strings. What is that all about? It's true. If you're looking on the second camera, and hopefully I can cut the second camera over there, the acoustic guitar up on top, which, yes, I do play. It's not just decoration. There's a black sock right under, between the sound hole and the bridge, underneath the strings. Why? Well, because when I speak, my voice vibrates the strings and it makes a ringing sound that I can hear. And I think the mics were picking up. And I am nothing if not a devotee of great audio. I grew up in the golden age of radio and talk radio, storytellers, people like Paul Harvey and Ludlow Porch. That's who I grew up listening to, and I love a good delivery, and good audio is so important to me. If there's a podcast, it doesn't even matter what the subject matter is. If it's an amazing podcast, I can't listen to it if the audio is trash. So I take that and I give that to you. Hopefully my obsession over good audio gives you a good listening experience, and that is why there is a sock in that guitar. Next. I like this one. I like this one because this, hopefully you can take this with you. If you could only do, and I love this question, there's always this one. If you could only do one, it's like if you could only take 5 songs to a desert island or 1 food to a desert island. If you could only do 1 strength training exercise for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? And that's Demetrius in NYC, baby. I thought about this, and I actually made a video about it not too long ago, and I think it's going to have to be the landmine. Using a bar and a reasonable amount of weight that's challenging for you, the landmine attachment involves a lot of the human movement, the fundamental human movement patterns, and while we're not particularly isolating anything, I'm not a bodybuilder, and I'm not a power lifter. So I don't care so much about max strength or building the ultimate body. I'm all about capability through strength and development. And I want you to be strong within yourself, and I want you to be comprehensively strong. One of the things that I do for fun, that I have a need for competition. And when you're an adult, when you're out of school, you lose opportunities to compete. You can't play school sports anymore, things like that. So you got to find what you can. And I was a runner my whole life. So I got to a point where pounding the pavement, doing long road races, I couldn't do it anymore. My knees were just giving me too much trouble. So I do Spartan races or obstacle course racing, OCR. And training for OCR involves strength, stamina, speed, agility, quickness, everything except powerlifting and bodybuilding. Comprehensive, all-around strength and capability. You got to climb, you got to swing, you got to crawl, you got to run, you got to do all those things. You're hanging. There's a tiny little bit of powerlifting where you got to pick up the Atlas ball, this big giant stone that you have to carry about 25 yards or so. But other than that, it's fundamental human movements and strength, comprehensive strength through capability. So that's what I think the landmine brings to the table. Don't overload it. My preference would be 12 to 20 reps, depending on where you're at in your training cycle and what you're training for. And you can involve a bit of a hinge, a bit of a squat, a bit of a pull, a bit of a push, and a bit of a lunge. You can vary it where you pass it over your head. You can do twisting moves with it. You can do a lot of things with a landmine. So if I was stuck with only one thing to foster my total strength goals, it would be the landmine. Appreciate you, Demetrius. From Cole in Auburn, Alabama. I'm a 33-year-old man, married with 2 kids aged 6 and 8. I was always fairly active and a regular-sized kid. Me too. I played all the usual sports growing up, but I found it harder and harder to find ways to be active as I get older, kind of like what I was just talking about. And I'm out of shape and overweight. I don't like how I feel. My blood work doesn't look good, and I'm really struggling with motivation. What would you tell a prospective client about getting started in a better direction? I appreciate that, and I appreciate you, Cole. And I want to say that you've already taken the first step. You are thinking about it. You are in contemplation, and you're looking to get forward into the action stage. First thing I would suggest is that you find your why, because things are going to get difficult. It's a pain in the ass working out. It takes time. It takes discomfort. It takes effort. And it takes commitment. And if you want to really be in this for the reasons that you said, it's going to be a lifelong commitment. And in order to keep that up, in order to stay focused and disciplined enough that you can maintain a reasonably fit life forever, you're going to need to find your why. And what does that mean? He who has a why can bear anyhow. I think that was Dostoevsky, right? Or Nietzsche. No, that was Nietzsche. Anyway, your why looks like it's right in front of me right here. Married with 2 kids aged 6 and 8. That's your why. If you are overweight, let's call it obese. Let's not sugarcoat things here. Soft pedaling, catastrophic issues is how we've gotten into a really bad place in our culture. Your blood work doesn't look good and you're obese. You don't like how you feel. Find your why. Find your why. Be present for your kids. Be able to play with those kids as they grow. Be able to be engaged with them. Throw the ball with them. Practice pitching or throwing a football or running or whatever it is that they're doing as they grow and as they develop as young people and young adults themselves and process through life. Be present for them. Be present for your wife who has given you herself as a commitment. Why don't you make yourself the best version that you can using the resources that you have? So that's where I would start. Find your why. And I want you to always remember that no matter what you're doing in this fitness world, remember your why. Remember your why. Remember those kids. Remember your family. Remember the people, the other people besides them who love you, who need you. These people are going to need you as they get older. And these people are going to want you around even when they don't technically need you, when your kids are grown and they got kids of their own. Be there for their kids, for your grandkids. Walk your kids down the aisle or be present at their wedding. Be present at their graduation. Be there for them because people love you and people need you and people want you around whether you realize it or not. So that's where I would start. If you can get your mind there, then you'll be in a good place. The second part of that is you're going to have a metaphorical funeral for old you. There's a lot of things that you're going to have to let die metaphorically, and you're going to have a funeral for those things. You can't hold on to old bad habits. You may have to take a different route to work if you drive by a place where you stop and get junk food every day. You may have to alter your social plans regarding what you do in your free time as far as bars, restaurants, things like that. So you're going to have to let that stuff die to build a new life, to build a new person, a new version of you that's much better and much more capable than that version. So those are the two places. That's what I would tell a prospective client who was at this stage, the contemplation stage, because you got to get your mind right before you can start working on your body. So that's what I would, that's my advice. I hope that helped. I hope that made sense. Jenny in Kalispell, Montana. We were just talking about Montana at the beginning of it, right? I want to start doing cardio, mostly for heart health, but some weight loss is a goal too. What running tips do you have for a beginner? All right. And as I mentioned, I grew up a runner, and there's one thing we all know about running. Unless you're a psychopath, running sucks. Sucks holistically, comprehensively, and all the time. What doesn't suck is the way you feel when you're fit. More specifically, if you get into competition, if you want to start running races, about 2 minutes after you cross the finish line, you feel better than you've ever felt. It's a euphoria. But anyway, let me digress there. Before we get into taking off at top speed down the road, maybe we start with walking. If you're a beginner, it says you're a beginner, what tips do you have for a beginner? Maybe you want to start walking first. If you are at that stage, then you can skip ahead of this advice. But the best cardio is actually for fat loss, because you mentioned some weight loss is a goal too, but heart health. So getting that heart rate up, and let's forget about the target heart zones that's been a craze for the last couple of years. Just get out and move. Just elevate your heart rate. You're not, I presume it doesn't say you're going to start running races or competing or anything, so who cares? We don't need to be out there going 80 or 90% of max. Just get out there and walk at a quick enough pace to get your heart rate elevated. And what you want to look for is that it's difficult to carry on a conversation if you were walking with someone. And by the way, do walk with someone, because it's a good way to pass the time, and it's a good way to stay out of your phone and out of your earbuds and actually connect with people. Tangent aside, when you do get include hills, if you live in Kalispell, it's flattish in Kalispell, but you got the biggest mountains in the world nearby, so get in the hills. Once you do progress to running, let's make sure that our breathing and our footfalls, our form, are correct. We could be here all day talking about this, so let me give you just a couple of things. When you start your running evolution for the day, the first few minutes are always the toughest, because your heart and your breathing is way out of whack and your body's trying to emergency regulate itself. and it's difficult to do if you don't have good breathing techniques. So we want to go in through the nose, down to the belly, out through the mouth, and it's good to do if you can develop your own version of kind of a box breathing, a 4-count box breathing, or 2 steps. I always breathe on my left foot. A track coach told me a long time ago that breathing, that inhaling and exhaling on your left foot does something for side stitches or cramps. I don't know if that's true, but it was a mental trigger and it helped. So get your breathing regulated. Inhale and exhale on your left foot as your left foot strikes, and see if you can do 2 or 4 steps. Once you get this better, get better at it, you can do 4 steps. So inhale, 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 exhale, 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 that kind of thing. Get your breathing right. Once you do that, you can regulate your heart rate and your breathing, and you can run all day long. Running is 90% mental, by the way. If you can get past the whole it sucks part. The other thing is your gait and your footfalls. A lot of people get caught in bouncing, and they go up and down too much instead of forward. So make sure that you're not bouncing on your feet. You want your feet to feel like you're pedaling a bicycle. That's a good mental picture for you to get in your head when you're running. And you want to, let's make sure that we're not toe striking or heel striking, because we're going to get shin splints and knee injuries and hip injuries and all kinds of stuff. So just between your heel and midfoot is a good place to strike, and slightly on the outside of your foot so we don't develop any ankle pronation or exacerbate any ankle pronation. So that's where I would tell you to start, and I hope that helped. And I think that's a good place to stop right here. All right. That is it for this bFIT bonus. I hope you enjoyed that. I like to make it a regular thing if we could. Take that stuff into the weekend and put it into motion. Now get out and go move yourself. Read, write, think, connect, and do. Be mindful, be fit, be capable and resolute. And I'll leave you with this thought. This quote is attributed to Jimmy Carr, but this is probably so old we don't know where it came from. Happiness is your current situation minus expectations. Think about that this weekend. Enjoy your life. Take care of your body, mind, and spirit, and don't worry about the big picture. Just take care of now, right now. Don't have a good weekend, y'all. Have a joyful weekend, whatever that means for you. Peace out, homies, and I'll talk to you soon.